Grit between my teeth, rotor wash roaring in my ears, and a boy's hand gripped in mine as we hurried through the alley toward the convoy. The sat phone buzzed against my plate carrier like a caged hummingbird under Kevlar. Normally, you don't take calls mid-extraction. But something primal, maybe a mother's instinct, made me answer. Mrs. The voice was shaky, breathless. This is St. Francis Children's. Your daughter is in critical condition. The words didn't land in order. Daughter. Critical. Copper pooled on my tongue. What happened? I demanded. Paper shuffled on the other end, a monitor beat too fast. Your husband's new wife brought her in. Claimed she fell, but the injuries, they don't match. I called the detective. He's not moving on it. Her voice dropped. Because her brother is the police chief. The alley tightened around me. My vision tunneled. My team loaded the boy and his grandmother into the truck, their mouths moving in a language I couldn't hear over the rush in my head. The nurse spoke quickly now, drawing courage from nowhere. If you want the truth to come out, it's on you. The war zone around me felt quieter than the line between us. Prep her chart. Don't discharge. Document everything. Photograph it all. Maintain chain of custody on every piece of clothing, I ordered. I'm 6,000 miles away, but I'm coming. She began to answer, but the call dropped. Not her fault. Mine. I handed my second-in-command the sat phone. Take them to Gaziantep. Keep the convoy moving. You're breaking protocol, he said flatly. Protocol doesn't raise my kid. Wheels up in 30. I made it 21. Our pilot owed me from Kabul and didn't ask why. On the runway, heat shimmered like a mirage of every certainty I thought I had. As the bird climbed, I stared at the map. The ocean between me and a room where my little girl lay under lights too bright for her eyes. Here's the thing about systems. They protect the people who built them. And the moment one decided my daughter's pain was worth its silence, it became my enemy. When those sworn to protect bury a child's truth, you stop asking permission. I crossed off 3 names I'd been keeping for years. The detective, the chief, the woman with the fake story. I wasn't going home to yell. I was going home to dismantle them, on camera, in court, on paper, until all that was left of their shield was a headline about its failure. The air hit like a wall when the plane door opened. Humid, heavy, wrong. Not what I wanted my daughter breathing in that hospital bed. My boots hit the ground before the stairs locked in place. No luggage. No pauses. No pleasantries. Just one backpack with the documents to strip power from the people who thought it belonged to them. A black SUV idled nearby. The driver didn't speak English, didn't need to. He knew the route, St. Francis Children's, cutting straight through the sleeping city. Streetlights streaked across the windows, slicing my reflection into fragments. Hair flattened from the headset. Eyes unblinking, too focused to cry. The nurse was waiting in the ER hallway when I arrived. No greeting, no chit-chat, just a slow shake of her head before she led me inside. The room felt blindingly white, my daughter's skin unnervingly pale. Machines beeped, hummed, and hissed around her like they were keeping her alive through sheer mechanical will. She's stable for now, the nurse murmured, then pulled back the blanket. My breath caught in my chest. The bruises weren't the kind you get from falling. Dark marks shaped like small hands. Finger impressions too tiny to be mine. Too cruel to come from anyone who should have loved her. I brushed her hair back gently. Who did this to you, sweetheart? I whispered. Her eyelids trembled, but she didn't wake. The nurse placed a sealed evidence bag on the counter. Clothes my daughter had arrived in. Still damp in places that made my stomach turn. I took photos, marked times, recorded everything, even my phone call with the detective. You recorded it? I asked, my tone sharper than I meant. She nodded. When he told me to drop it, I knew you'd need proof. That was when the door opened without a knock. She walked in like she owned the air in the room. The woman my ex-husband married while I was still trying to remember how to breathe after our divorce. Her perfume reached me before her voice, honey-coated venom. You're here, she said, almost smiling. We should talk before you do anything rash. I rose to my feet, every muscle shifting into something dangerous. No, I said, stepping forward. We'll talk after I make 3 calls, one to a lawyer, one to a journalist, and one, I glanced at the nurse, who gave the slightest nod. To someone who outranks your brother. Her smile wavered. You don't know what you're starting. I looked back at my daughter. And you have no idea what I'm finishing. By the time she left, her perfume was gone, replaced by antiseptic in fury. The nurse slipped me a piece of paper. 3 names, 3 numbers. Allies, she said. The first was a man who could get court dates moved without permission. The second was a journalist who made a career of exposing the untouchable. The third, the kind of number you never save in your phone. That one you keep on paper, because some names can't be linked to you until it's too late to stop what's coming. I called the journalist first. Who's protecting her? I asked. Silence. Then a slow exhale. I've been waiting for someone in the family to speak. They've kept their hands clean for 10 years, but I have files, sealed police reports, hospital records. You're the missing piece. We agreed to meet before dawn. When I returned to my daughter's room, she was still asleep, but her hand had shifted enough for me to see the hospital bracelet. Her name, her birthday, and the word victim. It felt wrong. She wasn't a victim anymore. I left just before 4 a.m. The streets were empty, the city asleep, but my mind was anything but. The cab dropped me at a side entrance to a parking garage. No cameras, no attendants. One man was waiting, leaning against a car. My father-in-law. Still in uniform, metals catching the dim light. His face gave nothing away. I heard, he said simply. And I'm not here to calm you down. I'm here to make sure you don't miss. We sat in the car. He handed me a thin folder that felt heavier than steel. Inside, photographs, sworn statements, and a signed affidavit from one of the police chief's own men. Why would he risk this? I asked. My father-in-law started the engine. Because, he said, he's as tired of them as we are. Even the filthiest walls have fractures, and I had a hammer in hand. We drove without a word, the city rushing past the windows. This wasn't a trip home, nor a ride to the station. We were heading straight to the one place her brother's influence couldn't reach, the federal building. By dawn, there would be a case file so thick that only a courtroom could shut it. Inside, the lobby was almost deserted except for a lone security guard, who eyed us like we were carrying a storm. My father-in-law's badge and uniform got us through without a single question. On the 12th floor, a woman in a dark suit stood waiting. No introductions, just a nod toward a conference room. The walls there were lined with locked cabinets. She set a black recorder on the table and hit record. Start from the beginning, she instructed. So I did. Syria, the hospital, the detective who never came, the warnings whispered about the police chief. Every word felt like it scraped something raw inside me, but I kept going. When I finished, she reached into her folder and slid over a photograph. My daughter, months earlier, sitting alone on a playground bench. The date told me exactly when I'd been overseas, when she should have been in school. She'd been watched. This is bigger than you think, the woman said. They'd been building a case for years, but my account gave them the missing link, direct evidence tying the chief's family to multiple cases they couldn't previously touch. I leaned back, torn between relief and rage. So what happens now? Now we move before they realize you've talked. By the time I left, 3 separate teams, federal agents, internal affairs, and civilian oversight, were set to converge. Walking to the car, my father-in-law finally spoke. They'll panic. When they panic, they'll slip. That's when we push. The first crack came within the hour. My phone lit up. An unknown number. Call me. I ignored it. Minutes later, my husband texted. She's gone. Packed a bag and left. I knew exactly where she'd gone. Back to her family, trying to shield herself from what was coming. But truth, once in motion, doesn't stop. By sunset, the first arrest proved it. The street outside the chief's house looked ordinary. Kids biking, sprinklers misting the lawns. From my father-in-law's truck, I watched 2 unmarked sedans pull up. Plainclothes agents stepped out, calm, purposeful. This is it, my father-in-law murmured. One agent used a key, confiscated in an earlier raid, to enter. Minutes crawled by until the door opened. Out came my husband's stepmother, hair messy, eyes darting. No cuffs yet. 2 more agents followed with sealed evidence bags, one containing the dark leather purse my daughter had described at the hospital. Another message from my husband. They're saying you ruined everything. Dad's furious. I didn't respond. Across the street, the chief himself emerged, gray t-shirt, jeans, wrists cuffed. Neighbors stared, frozen. Groceries spilled, oranges rolling on the pavement. They're taking him straight to federal holding, my father-in-law explained. No stops, no deals. But I wasn't watching the chief. I was watching her, my husband's stepmother, gripping the doorway like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her gaze met mine, and for a moment, all defiance drained from her face. She knew the protection of her family name was gone. Tomorrow, my father-in-law said as we pulled away, we go after the rest. Every one of them who stayed silent while your daughter suffered. I nodded, but I was already ahead. I wasn't just after justice. I wanted the silence itself destroyed, out in the open. And by morning, the story had exploded across every major news outlet. The police chief's arrest on federal child abuse charges hit before dawn, sending my husband's family into panic mode. My phone lit up with calls, some from familiar numbers, others from strangers. I ignored them all. At 9:12 a.m., the front gate camera showed my husband, still in his military jacket, staring into the lens but never buzzing. I stayed put, sliding a manila envelope toward my father-in-law across the kitchen table. Inside was the evidence I'd gathered in countless sleepless nights. Names, dates, hospital staff statements, recordings, proof that my husband's stepmother had been present and complicit the night my daughter was harmed. He took the envelope silently and left through the back door. By noon, a live news conference flashed on my phone. My father-in-law, in full uniform, told reporters no badge, title, or family tie would shield anyone who harmed children or protected those who did. The camera caught my husband on the edge of the crowd, his pale face betraying the first crack in his certainty. Comments flooded in relief, outrage, curiosity about the woman in the doorway. They didn't know yet, but they would. The next 48 hours blurred into subpoenas, interviews, and the watchful quiet before a storm. Discreet surveillance kept my home under observation, not for my safety but to prevent backroom deals. On the third morning, I got the call. "Ma'am, it's time." I dressed in the same plain black dress I'd worn to my mother's funeral, one that spoke of resolve, not mourning, and went to the courthouse. The hallway outside courtroom 4B was lined with people I knew, officers, city officials, my husband's allies, none meeting my eyes. Inside, the prosecutor's voice cut clean. Exhibit C. The recording of my calm, steady question to my husband's new wife. "Do you think she'll ever recover from what you did to her?" Her cold reply. "She'll survive, but maybe she'll learn to stay in her place." Gasps swept the room. Exhibit D followed, bank transfers proving bribes to bury evidence. Names, amounts, dates spilled under the courtroom lights, dismantling their invisible protection network. When the judge finally spoke, his words were heavy. Abuse of power, especially to hide crimes against the vulnerable, would meet the full force of the law. I walked out without glancing at my husband. Our next meeting would be across a legal table. The guilty verdict came swiftly. His new wife gripped the defense table until her knuckles blanched. My husband kept his eyes down, stripped of the control he once wore like armor. Reporters swarmed outside, microphones thrust forward, but I offered no comment. I went home to my daughter, still healing, still learning to sleep without fear. That night, a text came from an unknown number, likely an officer who had once laughed when I begged for help. I replied, "You didn't want to know, and now you do." In the aftermath, the police chief, her brother, was forced into early retirement, badge gone. The detective who refused to investigate lost his job and pension. My husband would spend the next 20 years behind the walls he'd once used to cage others. I didn't feel triumph, only necessity. One afternoon, my daughter wandered into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed, and whispered, "Mom, you kept your promise." I didn't ask which promise. I just held her close, knowing this had never been about vengeance. It was about locking every door they once used to hide their crimes. And for the first time in months, her face showed not fear but freedom.